Commander Zilton's 4 hands shook as he watched another star system fall to the Krex Empire. The massive view screen in the Confederation Command Center showed red marks spreading across the galaxy map like a disease. 12 systems had fallen, in just 6 months. His people were losing the war badly. "Sir, we're getting reports from the Nexus colonies," said his aide, a young Valdari officer named Kelton. "The Krex fleet destroyed 3 more worlds yesterday. The survivors are fleeing to the Outer Rim." Zilton closed his large eyes and felt his blue skin grow pale. The Krex were not like other enemies the Confederation had faced before. Most species in the galaxy fought wars with rules. They gave warnings before attacks. They accepted surrenders. They tried not to hurt civilians. The Krex did none of these things. The reptilian Krex Empire swept through space like hungry predators. Their ships were bigger and stronger than anything the peaceful Confederation could build. Their soldiers fought without mercy. When they took a world, they killed or enslaved everyone on it. There was no reasoning with them, no negotiating, no hope of peace. "How many ships do we have left?" Zilton asked. 47 battle cruisers and maybe 200 smaller vessels, Kelton replied. The Krex have over 3,000 ships in their main fleet alone. The numbers made Zilton's stomach hurt. The Confederation had never needed a large military before. For thousands of years, conflicts between species were settled through talks and trade agreements. When fights did happen, they were small and brief. No one had prepared for an enemy that wanted to destroy everything. "There has to be something we can do," Zilton said. "Some ally we haven't contacted yet." Kelton pulled up files on his datapad. "We've sent messages to every known civilization, sir. The Thorak Republic is too far away to help in time. The Gemini Alliance is already fighting the Krex on their own borders. The others are either too small or too scared to get involved." Zilton stared at the map again. In just a few more months, the Krex would reach the Confederation's core worlds where billions of innocent people lived. His own homeworld of Valderus Prime was directly in their path. His family was there, along with everyone he had ever cared about. "Wait," Kelton said suddenly. "There is one more entry in the database. A species called humans from a planet called Earth. But sir, the file says they're from what we classify as a death world." A death world? Zilton had heard the term before but never paid much attention to it. Most civilized species evolved on peaceful planets with stable climates and few dangerous animals. Death worlds were rare planets where everything seemed designed to kill any life that tried to survive there. "Yes, sir. According to our scouts, Earth has extreme weather, deadly creatures, poisonous plants, and natural disasters that happen all the time. The humans somehow survived all of that and became the dominant species, but sir, that was 50 years ago. We don't know if they're still alive or if they've developed space travel." Zilton thought about it. Any species that could survive on such a dangerous world might know something about fighting that peaceful civilizations had forgotten. It was probably hopeless, but he had to try everything. "Send them a message," he ordered. "Tell them about our situation. Ask if they can send any help at all. Even a few ships with brave volunteers might buy us some time." Kelton worked at his console for several minutes. "Message sent, sir. But Earth is 12 light years away. Even if they respond immediately, it will take time for any help to reach us." 3 days later, Zilton was reviewing evacuation plans when Kelton ran into the command center with excitement on his face. "Sir, we're getting a response from Earth," Kelton said breathlessly. "They're sending a fleet to help us." "How many ships?" Zilton asked, hoping for good news. 50 capital ships, sir, plus support vessels." Zilton felt his hope fade. 50 ships were better than nothing, but against 3,000 Krex vessels, it would barely make a difference. Still, any help was welcome. "When will they arrive?" he asked. "According to their message, their lead ship should be here within 6 hours. 6 hours? Zilton was confused. That's impossible. Even the fastest ships in the galaxy would take weeks to travel that distance. That's what the message says, sir. It's from someone called Captain Jake Morrison of the UCS Defiance. He says his fleet is already in hyperspace and approaching our position. Zilton decided not to question it too much. Maybe the humans had developed better engines than anyone expected. Or maybe they had been traveling toward this area of space for other reasons. Either way, he would take whatever help he could get. 6 hours later, space near the Confederation command station began to ripple and twist. 50 massive shapes dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Zilton stared at the view screen, in shock. These were not the small, primitive ships he had expected from a species that might still be learning space travel. The human vessels were huge, dark, and covered with weapon systems that Zilton didn't recognize. They moved with precision that spoke of military training and discipline. Their design was unlike anything in the Confederation database, built for war rather than exploration or trade. "Sir," Kelton whispered, "these ships are larger than our biggest battle cruisers, and those weapon signatures, I've never seen anything like them." A communication came through from the lead human ship. The image that appeared on the screen showed a middle-aged human male with short gray hair and serious eyes. His uniform was simple but practical, designed for function rather than ceremony. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the United Colonial. Ship Defiance," the human said in accented but clear Galactic Standard language. "We received your distress call, Commander Zilton. We're here to help you deal with your Krex problem." Zilton felt a mix of relief and worry. The humans had arrived faster and in greater numbers than he had dared hope. But something about Captain Morrison's calm confidence made him wonder exactly what kind of help these Deathworld survivors had brought to his war. Admiral Lisa Hayes stepped off the shuttle and onto the Confederation command station. The artificial gravity felt lighter than Earth normal, and the air smelled strange. Around her, alien beings moved with careful, measured steps. Everything about this place seemed designed to avoid conflict or aggression. "Welcome, Admiral Hayes," Commander Zilton said as he approached. His tall, thin frame and blue skin made him look fragile to human eyes. "We are grateful that your people answered our call for help." Lisa nodded politely, but her mind was already working. In the past hour, she had reviewed all the intelligence data the Confederation had provided about the Krex Empire. What she saw worried her, but not for the reasons the aliens expected. "Commander, I need to understand your current military situation," Lisa said. "How many casualties have you taken in the past 6 months?" Zilton looked uncomfortable. "We have lost approximately 15,000 personnel across all our forces." Lisa frowned. With 12 star systems under attack and battles raging for months, those numbers seemed impossibly low. "What about civilian casualties?" "The Krex have killed or captured roughly 2 million civilians," Zilton replied sadly. The numbers still didn't make sense to Lisa. Modern warfare between spacefaring civilizations should produce much higher casualty rates. Either the Confederation was not telling her the truth, or they fought wars very differently than humans did. Captain Ben Parker joined them, having just finished inspecting the station's defenses. His expression told Lisa everything she needed to know about what he had found. "Admiral, we need to talk," Ben said quietly. They excused themselves and found a private conference room. Ben activated a small device that would prevent electronic surveillance, a precaution that made the nearby aliens nervous. "Lisa, these people have no idea how to fight a real war," Ben said. "I've looked at their weapons, their tactics, their training procedures. Everything is designed to minimize damage and casualties. They actually warn their enemies before they attack." "What do you mean, warn them?" "They broadcast surrender demands and give the enemy time to respond before they start shooting. They have rules about which ships they can target and which areas of space are off limits during battles. They even have agreements about when battles can take place so both sides can prepare." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. "They're fighting a war like it's a sporting event." "Exactly. And the Krex are taking advantage of it. While the Confederation follows all these rules, the Krex ignore them completely. They attack without warning, target civilian areas, and never accept surrender offers." Major Kate Sullivan entered the room with her own report. As the fleet's tactical specialist, she had been studying Krex battle formations and strategies. "Admiral, I've analyzed 17 different Krex engagements," Kate said. "Their tactics are primitive but effective against an enemy that won't fight back properly. They rely on overwhelming force and intimidation. Against a military that actually wants to win, They would be easy to defeat. Lisa thought about the implications. The Confederation had invited humans to join a war, but they expected humans to fight according to alien rules that guaranteed failure. The peaceful species had never learned that sometimes the only way to stop a predator was to become a more dangerous predator. We need to meet with their military commanders, Lisa decided. They need to understand how this war is going to change. And an hour later, Lisa sat in a conference room with 12 Confederation military leaders. Representatives from 6 different species were present, all of them looking hopeful that human reinforcements would turn the tide of the war. We have prepared joint operation plans, Commander Zilton said, activating a holographic display. Your ships will be integrated into our existing fleet formations. We have scheduled the next engagement for the Talvec system in 4 days. This will give both sides time to prepare and position their forces. Lisa stared at him. You scheduled a battle? Of course. The Krex commander in that system has agreed to meet our fleet at the designated coordinates. Both sides will bring equal numbers of ships to ensure a fair fight. Captain Jake Morrison, who had remained quiet until now, finally spoke up. Commander, with respect, that's not how humans fight wars. What do you mean? Asked General Thorne, an insect-like Zephyrian, with compound eyes. Jake stood up and walked to the holographic display. When humans fight, we fight to win as quickly and completely as possible. We don't schedule battles, we don't fight fair. We don't give the enemy time to prepare. The alien commanders looked confused and uncomfortable. Admiral Kelso, a gray-skinned Centauri, spoke for the group. But how do you maintain honor in combat? How do you prevent unnecessary casualties? We prevent casualties by ending the war fast, Jake replied. Every day this conflict continues. More of your people die. The Krex are using your rules against you. Lisa activated her own display, showing human tactical doctrine. This is how we propose to handle the Krex threat. We hit them when they don't expect it. We target their command ships first to disrupt their coordination. We attack their supply lines to prevent reinforcement. We don't stop until they can't fight back. The silence in the room was uncomfortable. Finally, Commander Zilton spoke. Admiral, what you're describing sounds like total war. That's exactly what it is, Lisa confirmed. The Krex started a total war the moment they began killing civilians and ignoring surrender offers. You can't fight a predator with rules that the predator doesn't follow. Dr. Sue Morgan, the fleet's medical officer, had been studying the alien personnel files. She leaned forward and spoke carefully. Commanders, I've noticed something interesting about your species. Your medical records show very low levels of stress hormones and aggressive neurochemicals. Have your people been genetically modified? The aliens exchanged glances. General Thorne answered reluctantly. Yes. Over many generations, our species have evolved beyond the need for primitive aggressive instincts. We have learned to solve conflicts through reason and negotiation. Sue nodded. That explains a lot. Your people literally can't think like predators because you've evolved past that capability. You're not just choosing to fight with rules, you're biologically incapable of fighting without them. The realization hit everyone in the room at the same time. The Confederation had asked humans for help, but humans were the only species present that still retained the predatory instincts necessary for total war. The aliens had invited wolves to help them fight other wolves, not realizing that they had become sheep. So what happens now? Commander Zilton asked quietly. Lisa looked around the table at the alien faces watching her. Now we show the Krex what real predators look like. The Nexus system had been under Krex control for 3 weeks. Their massive fleet of 200 ships surrounded the main shipyard, where the Confederation built their vessels. According to traditional warfare rules, both sides should have met in open space for a formal battle. The Krex commander had even sent a message agreeing to fight in 2 days. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UCS Defiance, watching the enemy fleet through long-range sensors. The Krex ships were arranged in neat formations, their crews probably preparing for another easy victory against opponents who followed predictable patterns. Commander Paul Rodriguez reports his stealth squadron is in position. reported Lieutenant Amy Carter from her tactical station. All 20 ships are hidden in the asteroid field, sir. Jake nodded. While the Confederation forces prepared for a scheduled battle, the humans had been moving their pieces into place for 3 days. The Kreks had no idea what was about to happen to them. Signal Admiral Hayes, Jake ordered. Tell her we're ready to begin. On the Confederation command ship, Admiral Kelso was reviewing battle plans with his staff when his communication officer looked up in alarm. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from the Kreks fleet. It looks like they're powering up all their weapons. Commander Zilton, who was observing the joint operation, felt confused. But the battle isn't scheduled to begin for another 18 hours. Why would they prepare so early? The answer came in the form of explosions throughout the Kreks formation. Paul Rodriguez's stealth ships had emerged from hiding and were firing on the enemy vessels with devastating effectiveness. The Kreks command ships, caught completely unprepared, began taking severe damage. What's happening? Zilton demanded. The humans are attacking before the agreed time. Admiral Kelso tried to contact the human fleet. Admiral Hayes, please respond. Your forces are engaging the enemy ahead of schedule. Lisa Hayes appeared on the communication screen, her expression calm and professional. Admiral Kelso, we're conducting military operations against a hostile force. There is no schedule. But the Kreks commander agreed to meet us in battle tomorrow morning, Kelso protested. This violates the accepted protocols of warfare. The Kreks violated those protocols the moment they started killing civilians, Lisa replied. We're ending this threat now. On the UCS Vanguard, Captain Ben Parker led his assault teams toward the largest Kreks battleship. The enemy vessel was trying to turn and fight, but the surprise attack had damaged their main engines. Ben's ship latched onto the Kreks hull with magnetic clamps. Boarding teams, prepare for entry, Ben announced over the ship's communication system. Standard procedure. Fast, efficient, no survivors. Lieutenant Colonel Dana Webb led the first team through the breach in the Kreks hull. The reptilian aliens inside were still scrambling to reach their battle stations when the human soldiers appeared. Dana's team moved through the ship's corridors with practiced precision, their weapons cutting down any Kreks who tried to resist. The Confederation observers watched in horror as the human boarding action unfolded on their screens. The humans didn't demand surrender. They didn't try to take prisoners, they simply eliminated every Krek soldier they encountered and secured the ship. Admiral Hayes, your forces are committing war crimes, Admiral Kelso said, his voice shaking. The Kreks crew is trying to surrender, but your soldiers are ignoring their surrender signals. Lisa looked at him with cold eyes. Admiral, the Kreks don't accept surrender from your people. Why should we accept it from them? Because we're supposed to be better than they are, Zilton said quietly. No, Lisa replied. We're supposed to be alive. There's a difference. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted only 4 hours. The human ships had destroyed or captured every Kreks vessel in the system. The enemy fleet that had terrorized the Confederation for weeks was completely eliminated. Not a single Krek ship escaped to report what had happened. Dr. Ken Phillips, the human fleet science officer, was examining the captured Kreks technology when he made an interesting discovery. The enemy weapons were powerful, but designed for long-range battles between equally matched opponents. Their ships had thick armor, but weak internal defenses. Everything about Kreks' military design assumed they would fight enemies who gave them time to prepare. They're not actually superior warriors, Ken reported to Admiral Hayes. They're bullies who got lucky fighting opponents who wouldn't hurt them properly. Meanwhile, Major Kate Sullivan was reviewing the tactical data from the battle. The Kreks had lost over 30,000 personnel in 4 hours. The humans had lost 12 people, mostly in boarding actions where enemy soldiers had managed to fight back before being overwhelmed. The efficiency is remarkable, Kate told her staff. We eliminated an entire enemy fleet with minimal losses because we didn't give them a chance to fight back effectively. Commander Zilden requested a private meeting with Captain Morrison after the battle. The two men met in a quiet observation deck where they could see the wreckage of the Kreks fleet floating in space. Your methods are effective, Zilton admitted, but they're also terrifying. My people called you for help, but we're beginning to wonder if we've invited something worse than the Kreks into our galaxy. Jake looked out at the destroyed enemy ships. Commander, the Kreks were killing your people and destroying your worlds. Now they're not. That's what victory looks like. But at what cost? Zilton asked. Those Krek soldiers who died today might have had families. They might have been forced to fight by their government. We'll never know because your people didn't give them a chance to explain. In war, the enemy's personal situation doesn't matter, Jake replied. What matters is stopping them from killing more of your people. Every day we spent following your rules of warfare was another day the Kreks could destroy another world. Zilton understood the logic, but it still made him uncomfortable. What happens when this war is over? When there are no more enemies to fight? Will you still be our allies, or will you decide that we're too weak to be your equals? Jake was quiet for a long moment. Commander, humans don't fight wars to make friends. We fight wars to win. Everything else is secondary. The alien commander felt a chill run through his body. For the first time since the war began, he wondered if the Confederation had made a terrible mistake. They had asked for help from predators, and predators had come. But what happened when the predators decided they no longer needed to pretend to be allies? 3 months after the first battle, the human fleet had pushed deep into Krek's territory. What had once been a mighty empire was crumbling faster than anyone thought possible. Captain Joe Turner stood on the bridge of the UCS Devastator, watching another Krek's world surrender without a fight. "Sir, that's the 15th planet this week," reported his communications officer. "The Krek's governor is requesting terms for peaceful surrender." Joe looked at the planet through the main viewer. It was a beautiful world with blue oceans and green continents home to 50 million Krek civilians. 6 months ago, ships from this same world had been bombing Confederation colonies. "Standard terms," Joe ordered. "Complete disarmament, removal of all military facilities, and full cooperation with occupation forces. No negotiations." The surrender was accepted within an hour. Joe wasn't surprised. Word had spread throughout the Krek's empire about what happened to planets that tried to resist human forces. The humans didn't just defeat enemy fleets, they eliminated the enemy's ability to ever fight again. Major Ellen Ross was working in her office aboard the UCS Retribution when Admiral Hayes called her for a report. Ellen commanded the Psychological Warfare Division, and her work had been more effective than any weapon the fleet carried. "What's the current status of Krek's morale?" Lisa asked. Ellen pulled up her latest analysis. "It's completely broken, Admiral. We're intercepting communications from all over their empire. Military units are deserting. Civilian populations are demanding their government surrender. Some planets are overthrowing their own leaders to avoid fighting us." "What changed there? Minds? Fear mostly. We've been broadcasting footage of our battles to every Krek's communication network. They've seen what happens when their fleets meet ours. They've heard the stories from survivors about human boarding actions. To them, we're not just another enemy. We're something from their worst nightmares." Ellen's methods were simple but effective. Instead of hiding human capabilities, she made sure every Krek citizen knew exactly what they were facing. The psychological impact of watching their most powerful warships destroyed in minutes was devastating to enemy morale. "There's something else, Admiral," Ellen continued. "We're also picking up communications from Confederation space. The alien governments are having private discussions about the human fleet." Lisa frowned. "What kind of discussions?" "They're scared, ma'am. Not of the Kreks anymore, but of us. They're asking questions about what happens after the war ends." Meanwhile, Dr. Ken Phillips was working in his laboratory, studying captured Krek's technology and biology. What he had learned over the past months painted a disturbing picture of the galaxy's military balance. Ken called his assistant, Dr. Nina Cole, to review his findings. "Nina, look at these weapon specifications. The Krek's arsenal is actually less advanced than what most Confederation species could build if they wanted to." Nina examined the data. "Then why were the Kreks winning the war?" "Because the Confederation never tried to build real weapons. They created tools for limited conflicts, not instruments of total war. The Kreks were winning because they were the only species willing to fight without restrictions." Ken pulled up comparative analysis charts. "Now look at human technology. Our weapons are decades ahead of anything in this galaxy. Our ships are faster, stronger, and more heavily armed than even the most advanced alien designs. We're not just winning this war, we're demonstrating complete technological superiority. What does that mean for the future? Nina asked. It means humanity has become the dominant military power in known space, whether we planned it or not. On the Confederation command station, Commander Zilton was meeting with representatives from 12 different species. The topic of their secret discussion was what to do about their human allies. The humans have saved us from the Krex threat, admitted General Thorne, but they've also shown us that we're completely defenseless against any species that fights like they do. Admiral Kelso nodded grimly. Their technology is beyond our understanding. Their tactics are ruthless and effective. If they ever decide we're enemies instead of allies, we would have no way to defend ourselves. What are you suggesting? Asked Ambassador Vex, a tall, thin representative from the Outer Rim worlds. I'm suggesting we need to prepare for the possibility that humanity might not be content to return to their corner of the galaxy when this war ends, Kelso replied. Commander Zilton understood their fears, but he also remembered the desperate situation they had been in just months before. The humans answered our call for help when no one else would. They've saved billions of our people from Krex slavery. Doesn't that count for something? Of course it does, Thorne replied. But gratitude doesn't change the fact that we're now dependent on their protection. What happens if they decide that protection comes with conditions we don't want to accept? The question hung in the air without an answer. None of the species present had any military capability that could challenge human forces. They were all completely at the mercy of their saviors. Back on the UCS Defiance, Captain Jake Morrison was reviewing reports from across the former Krex Empire. The war was effectively over. The Krex government had collapsed. Their military was destroyed, and their remaining worlds were surrendering as fast as human ships could reach them. Admiral Hayes wants to see you in her ready room, Lieutenant Amy Carter informed him. Jake found Lisa studying star charts that showed the current position of all human forces. Red dots marked human-controlled systems, now numbering in the dozens. Jake, we need to talk about what comes next, Lisa said. The Krex Empire is finished. Their homeworld surrendered this morning. The war is over. Congratulations, Admiral. The Confederation is safe. Lisa turned to face him. Is it? Jake, look at this map. We now control or monitor more territory than the Krex ever did. We have military bases and systems throughout this region of space. We've demonstrated that no other species in the galaxy can stand against us. Jake began to understand her concern. You're worried about the political implications. I'm worried about what happens when Earth Command realizes what we've accomplished out here. We didn't just help the Confederation win a war. We've established human dominance over this entire sector of the galaxy. What are your orders, Admiral? Lisa looked back at the star chart. My orders were to assist the Confederation against the Krex threat. That threat is eliminated. But Jake, how do we go back to being just helpers when everyone now knows we're the most powerful force in known space? The question echoed the same concerns being discussed in secret meetings throughout Confederation space. The humans had come to help, but their help had fundamentally changed the balance of power in the galaxy. The species that had called for aid were beginning to understand that they might have traded independence for protection, and there was no way to undo that exchange. 6 months after the Krex Empire's final surrender, the galaxy had settled into a new reality. The reptilian species that had once terrorized dozens of worlds now lived under strict human oversight. Their military was gone, their weapons destroyed, and their government replaced by administrators who reported to Admiral Hayes. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of a human monitoring station orbiting the former Krex homeworld. Through the massive windows, he could see the planet below, peaceful and quiet. Cargo ships moved between the surface and orbital facilities, but they carried food and medical supplies instead of weapons. The Krex Council is requesting another meeting, reported Lieutenant Nina Cole, who now served as the station's diplomatic officer. They want to discuss reducing the restrictions on their industrial capacity. Jake didn't look away from the planet. What's their current production status? They're operating at 30% of pre-war levels. Enough for basic needs, but not enough to rebuild a military infrastructure. Then they're exactly where they need to be. Nina hesitated before asking her next question. Sir, how long are we planning to maintain these restrictions? Jake finally turned to face her. As long as it takes to make sure they never threaten anyone again. The Confederation learned the hard way what happens when you trust predators to behave themselves. Meanwhile, on the Confederation command station, Commander Zilton was preparing for what might be his final meeting with human leadership. The past months had made it clear that the relationship between humans and the other species had changed, permanently. Admiral Lisa Hayes arrived exactly on time, as humans always did. She entered the conference room with Captain Morrison and Major Kate Sullivan, their expressions professional but distant. Commander Zilton, Lisa said as she took her seat. Thank you for agreeing to this meeting. I understand you have concerns about human activities in Confederation space. Zilton tried to choose his words carefully. The humans had saved his people, but they had also made it clear that gratitude had limits. Admiral, my government appreciates everything humanity has done for us. However, we're receiving reports about human bases being established in systems that were never part of the original conflict. Those bases are necessary for regional security, Kate replied. The Krex Empire may be defeated, but there could be other threats we haven't identified yet. But Admiral, Zilton continued, some of these bases are in Confederation territory. Our people are beginning to feel like they're being occupied rather than protected. Lisa studied him for a moment. Commander, do you remember what your space looked like 7 months ago? Krex ships were destroying your worlds, your fleets were scattered, your people were dying by the millions. Of course I remember. And do you remember what your military forces contributed to the victory over the Krex? Zilton felt uncomfortable. The truth was that Confederation forces had played almost no role in their own liberation. Human ships had done all the fighting, while alien forces watched from a safe distance. Our forces provided intelligence and logistical support, he said weakly. Your forces provided nothing that we couldn't have obtained more efficiently on our own, Jake said bluntly. The only reason we included Confederation ships in our operations was to make you feel like you were participating in your own rescue. Words hit Zilton like a physical blow. He had suspected the truth, but hearing it stated so directly was painful. So what happens now? Do we become your subjects? You become what you've always been, Lisa replied. A collection of peaceful species that can't defend themselves against real predators. The only difference is that now you have guardians who can. Dr. Sue Morgan, who had been studying the biological and social effects of the war, entered the room with her final report. Admiral, I've completed my analysis of post-war conditions throughout the region. What did you find? Sue activated a holographic display showing statistical data. Crime rates in former Krex territory have dropped by 90%. Trade between systems has increased by 300%. No armed conflicts have occurred anywhere in human-monitored space. That sounds like success, Zilton said. It is success, Sue agreed. But it's success that depends entirely on human oversight. Remove our monitoring stations and enforcement patrols, and the old problems would return within months. So we can never leave, Zilton said quietly. You can never be left alone, Lisa corrected. There's a difference. Admiral Hayes stood up and walked to the large viewing port that showed the stars beyond the station. Commander, your people called us for help because you were facing extinction. We answered that call and saved your civilization. But we can't unsave you. We can't pretend that we don't know how helpless you are against anyone who fights like we do. What if we tried to develop our own defenses? Zilton asked. What if we built weapons and trained soldiers? Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. Commander, we've been watching your industrial capacity for months. Even if you spent the next 50 years building weapons, you couldn't create anything that would challenge a single human ship, and that's assuming we allowed you to try. The implications of his words were clear. The humans wouldn't permit any species in their area of influence to develop military capabilities that might threaten human interests. So this is permanent, Zilton said. Humanity becomes the dominant power in this region of space, and everyone else accepts whatever protection you're willing to provide. This was always permanent, Lisa replied. The moment your people sent that message asking for help, you changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. You can't uninvite the apex predator once you've shown them where you live. Captain Morrison joined the Admiral at the viewing port. Commander, look out there. Every world you can see is peaceful and secure. Trade is flourishing. Scientific research is advancing. Children are growing up without fear of invasion. This is what victory looks like. But it's not our victory, Zilton said. It's yours. Does that matter? Jake asked. Your people are alive and safe. Your children will grow up in a galaxy where they don't have to worry about species like the Kreks. The price of that safety is accepting that humanity will always be watching, always be ready to intervene if necessary. Zilton looked around the room at the human faces watching him. They weren't cruel or hostile. They genuinely believed they were doing the right thing. That somehow made it worse. What you're describing is benevolent tyranny, he said. What we're describing is reality, Lisa replied. The universe doesn't care about your independence or your pride. It only cares about who has the power to enforce their will. Your people learned that lesson when the Kreks invaded. We're just making sure you don't have to learn it again. As Zilton prepared to leave, he realized that the war had truly ended exactly as the humans intended. The galaxy was safer, more peaceful, and more prosperous than it had been in generations. The price of that peace was the freedom of every species that wasn't strong enough to protect itself. The Deathworlders had answered the call for help, and they had delivered exactly what they promised. The aliens just hadn't understood what that help would ultimately cost them.